You know, Max, your feelings about Russia, the former Soviet Union, obviously personal, as were Mika's father, Dr. Brzezinski. And you certainly have some insights on Russia that others don't. I'm curious, what are we to make of these signs of dissent, whether it's coming in Geneva, where he's beyond the reach of Vladimir Putin, or whether it's a highly respected military man going on television and completely mocking and eviscerating Vladimir Putin's strategic moves? What do we make of that?
Well, clearly, Joe, there is dissent in upper-level Russian circles. People do have access to information, even though Putin has tried to crack down on that. They can get it through Telegram and other sources. And clearly, I think most of the Russian elites were shocked and surprised by Putin's invasion of Ukraine. He did not mobilize public support for this war of aggression, and I'm sure that most of the elites are horrified by what Putin is doing, but they also are fear for their lives. If they stand up to Putin, he has complete control of the state, so they don't really have any way of changing his policy, and that's kind of the tragedy of Russia right now, Joe, is that everybody, I think most of the elites in Russia can see the terrible course that they are on under Putin, the tragedy for both, not just for Ukraine, but for Russia, but they really can't do anything about it because it's a one-man state, even more so than it was in the days of the Communist Party, when at least you had a Politburo and there was some collective check and balance on the supreme leader. Right now, it's just Putin, and it's not clear who he listens to, how he makes decisions, or whether he cares whether the elites are behind him or not, because his message is, you know, get behind me or suffer the consequences.
So your piece in the Washington Post, it's entitled, "Don't Worry About Putin's Feelings." I think I have at least one brother and a husband who agrees with this. The Russian offensive appears to be petering out, and a major Ukrainian counteroffensive is still to come. But instead of celebrating the Ukrainians' progress, many in the West are reacting with trepidation. French President Emmanuel Macron is warning that Russia must not be humiliated. Italy is circulating its own 4-point peace plan. Given that the world widely expected Kyiv to fall within 3 days of a Russian invasion, it is the height of hubris to say what Ukraine can or cannot achieve on the battlefield. Given the horrors that Russia has inflicted on the areas it has conquered, which include rape, murder, and deportation, it is the height of inhumanity to insist that Ukraine turn over any of its people to indefinite Russian occupation. More likely, Putin would view any preemptive concessions as a sign of faltering resolve and simply redouble his determination to outlast his enemies. It's time to stop worrying about sparing Putin's feelings. Russia must suffer such a devastating defeat that it will be many decades before another Russian leader thinks of attacking a peaceful neighbor. I agree. It makes sense, especially when you think about the atrocities. I can't believe anybody would want to put Ukraine in the position of having to cede any territory, anybody, to Russia. But they have nukes. So what do you say to those who say, well, we're trying to avoid a World War III here?
Well, I agree we should try to avoid a World War III, and that's why I've been opposed to getting U.S. forces directly involved in the war. I've been opposed to a no-fly zone because I think that's too dangerous. But this is a different category, Mika. This is not about the United States going to war with Russia. This is about Ukrainians fighting back against the invasion that Russia has mounted against their own country. And the risk of nuclear escalation is one that the Ukrainians are willing to bear. I mean, let's be clear here. The odds of Putin using a nuclear weapon, I think, are quite low. But if he were to use one, it would be most likely in Ukraine. It's not going to be against NATO because he's not going to start World War III. The Ukrainians are aware of that, but they are fighting on anyway. They are not being deterred. And so my view is we're sitting here on the sidelines. We're supporting them from afar. They are fighting our battles for us, Mika. They're not just defending themselves. They're defending us. They're defending Europe. They're defending the entire civilized world. And so and they're willing to bear the risk. They're fighting, they're dying, they're suffering the horrific consequences of Russian barbarism and brutality. And so who are we to say, oh, we're too worried about Russia, don't go too far? No, I mean, obviously, there are lines they should not cross. I don't think they should invade Russia itself. They shouldn't bomb Moscow. There are things that are over the top.
Right.
But in terms of fighting for their own territory, which Russia has stolen from them, they have every right to do that. They are doing that right now, and we need to support them instead of second-guessing what they're doing.